It is Tuesday, April 7th, 2021. Actually, it's Wednesday. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was yet another non-virtual Get Your Ass Kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Wednesday. And, as occasionally happens, I get behind the curve enough that I end up starting the show at least mostly nude. So anyway, had to get the shower. Had to shower the Matt Funk off. It was a good session. It was a good session. We didn't really get a lot as far as like a lot of different material assimilated, but that's fine. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it was kind of a tough movement to hammer down, and I was having a lot of difficulty with it myself. But basically, it was a guillotine. You know, guillotine from standing. You know, your opponent shoots in, and the first thing that I was screwing up on was my footing. And footing is vastly important. I mean, like, when you're in that position, you kind of want to jump back as soon as you're experiencing any resistance from your opponent, and then kind of yank down on, like, the back of their neck, the back of their elbow, you know, and then pull them in. And I really, really, really need to work on my guillotine setups from that, because that's really where my problems started. And I think one of the reasons I was having so much trouble with it was that it's something that I know how to do. You know, it's something that I've done a lot of. You know, it's not the first time I trained guillotines. You know, I've gotten that guillotine on people before. So, you know, again, it's nothing really quote unquote new for me. But I do have it. I have it in my mind, right? But it's not really fresh. You know, and there are some mild differences between the way it was instructed to me before and the way it was instructed to me this time. There was a lot of similarities, but there were some differences that made a difference in the way that it was coming out in my physical movements. And one of the troubles I was having on it is, you know, there's this part on it where you've got the guillotine and they guard against it, right? You know, so they start pulling it down and away, and so you switch your footing to where you've got kind of an X for a moment, and you switch the left foot, or I'm sorry, the right foot from their hip and their knee, and your knee to their other hip. You switch that to their inner thigh, but like have it on the ground. And there's a part where you prop yourself up and flick them, you know, with like a butterfly sweep. And I was having so much trouble on that, and I don't know. There was something that wasn't being instructed or communicated in an instruction that, like, I was skipping over it because of that, and I don't know. I kept fucking it up, you know, and it wasn't working right, and I think I got it to work right, like, just barely once or twice, and it was because there was another adjustment to be made on it, and actually we did the guillotine 3 different ways. Where number one, you do it on the, or no, I think we did it 2. I'm trying to think if we did it 3 different ways or just 2 different ways. I think we subsected it into 3 movements, but ultimately that we had done the guillotine itself only twice, and I was having so much issue with that. And like I said, it kind of bugs me because that's a choke that I actually like doing. I've gotten that one, like, reflexively on people. It's like if you are stupid enough that when you're coming in, that you specifically put your head off to the side, or I'm able to get your head off to the side, I will guide it right into that fucking guillotine. I like the guillotine choke. And I'm not particularly good at getting that S grip all the way over my opponent's shoulder, but I'm getting better at it. It's always been an issue for me, but it seems like over the last year or so, I've been getting that in a little bit tighter. But yeah, I'm having a lot of trouble with the footwork on that. And also on the butterfly sweep. I need to work with somebody for an hour just doing nothing but that fucking butterfly sweep, so I can kind of re-engage it into my brain, It's it's in there somewhere, it's buried under a year of, just bullshit, and not being connected up right is causing me to not being able to execute it properly. But anyway, so far, I'm up to 3 sessions for this week, and so I'm thinking I'm probably not going to go in tomorrow. Thinking I'm going to go fishing tomorrow, and then I'll probably go in again on Friday. Well, I'm definitely going to go in on Friday, but whether I go in tomorrow or not is still out to question. I don't know. I may. I did not stay around too long for the session afterward, but on I think it was on Monday. Yeah, I got just a little session in on Monday, and I'll tell you what, that's something that you kind of have to do. If you're practicing jiu-jitsu, you have to spar. Whether it be flow rolling or positional sparring during class or after class, you have to spar. You have to do it. You have to put it to a test. You have to give yourself an opportunity to utilize the things that you're learning, just beyond the actual lesson itself. But yeah, so I actually got a little bit sore, but that's it's a good sign, right? It means I actually did some work. But the gentleman that I rolled with is very, very good, and I didn't see him afterward, and I can only hope it's that he wasn't able to make it in the evening class or whatever. And it's not due to anything that I did to him. I don't think I did anything to him. I mean, I didn't break anything or scratch him, or I don't recall him drawing any blood or anything like that, or causing him any real undue comfort. And the one time that I did tap him, it was a relatively gentle come on. I didn't just slam it on him and then Valley Tudo his ass. So so I don't think it was that. But anyway, it's one of those things that I always have trouble with. Gauging how much effort that I really should be putting toward getting out. And I tend to apply it all. It's just how I am. But the times that I'm able to get a hold of myself, relax, really put myself in the situation, and kind of just let go of it, and be okay, well, what would be the best way to counter this hip? Because he's going to have the hip there for the next movement that he's trying to go to. And so what would just deactivate that and put me in a neutral position and get me to where I could set something up. That's I feel like that's really the attitude that I have to be taking, is because I can do that, and when I do it, I tend to get stuff, it's I tend to feel like I'm really getting somewhere with my jiu-jitsu, and I kind of do some really cool stuff when it happens. But it's that vocabulary of knowing what to reach for. I don't know. I think just the few minutes that I get on per technique, and then the infrequency of the reaffirmation of it, I think it's kind of an issue that I'm having with the training paradigm that I'm currently involved in. Not to say it's bad or anything like that, but I think that the movements themselves need more reinforcement, And so, because otherwise I feel like you have to be a really practiced individual to begin with in order to be able to train in that kind of paradigm. That it's like the next step kind of paradigm. I'm not trying to shoot it down or like disqualify it or anything like that. I'm just feeling that kind of sensation about it. Whether that's actually legitimate or if it's just me, I couldn't tell you. It's all subjective. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down with some music. And as far as where we're going to go, I was up in the air last time around. I had two that were on my mind as far as what I wanted to go to. And what the hell happened here? That's weird. It just cut out on me. I wonder if it's okay. Well, we'll find out here in a moment. I think we're recording, and it sounds like that's going. Okay. Oh, that's what it was. I turned down the volume for some... I don't know how, but I managed to get a hold of the volume, and that caused it to go down. Anyway, get out of that window. I'm trying to just clear up some stuff so that my browsers and all that aren't causing the program to have any real big issues. And I'm sure that's causing it, and that's causing it. And that one we'll leave open, and then this one will close. South America, we'll get out of that one, because we don't need to have it open, and we're not going to have that one open right now. And I'm not going to open that one. Like I said, I'm just trying to narrow down what I've got open here, because I've typically got, like, I don't know, like at least 10 tabs open at any one time. It's not healthy, I don't think. I'm sure it counts as some sort of, I don't know, like, I want to say like blight, like character flaw or something like that. Anyway, we got that. Get rid of that one. We don't need that one. We don't need that one. We don't need that one. And we're going to leave those open because we do kind of need them. This one, do we need this one? No, we don't need this one. Alright. That ought to have things zooming along a little better. Just make sure. Yeah, we'll get rid of that one. I don't think we're going to cover that. I'm not going to cover that. And not going to cover that. Not going to cover that. Yeah, we'll leave that one open just in case. And hopefully I've cleaned up enough RAM to where this thing is going to actually function instead of just act like it's functioning. And so anyway, like I said, last time around I was up in the air as far as which song I wanted to go to for our first dance. And so I ended up going with 99 Problems by Body Count. But that was not the only one in contention. And as a matter of fact, it's by one of my guiltiest of pleasures, Steel Panther. And so we are going to go with, if I can get down to it here. No. Here we go. I'm Not Your Bitch by Steel Panther. First dance here on Coin Metal. And that was Rivers of Nile with Old Nothing. And so, what we're going to get into today, I had a whole bunch of business that I dragged up, and I was kind of scrolling through this one thing. It's on GitHub, but I wasn't going to go into that for any reason in the old episode today. Yeah. Got this thing here, it's on decrypt.co, and it's by Matthew DeSalvo, so yes, penis. And it was authored April 7th, 2021, No indication of time. Shame on you, Matthew. Shame on you. JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon. Bitcoin regulation, a serious emerging issue. Pfft, whatever. I bet if China had an equivalent of Jamie Dimon, that he would have been saying the same thing back in like 2015, 2016 when they were talking about making Bitcoin illegal. Anyway, continuing on. The legal and regulatory status of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies is something that needs to be dealt with, and now, according to Bitcoin skeptic and JP Morgan boss, Jamie Dimon. Dimon, who famously called Bitcoin a, quote, fraud back in 2017, made the comments in a letter to shareholders today. Quote, there are serious emerging issues that need to be dealt with, and rather quickly. The growth of shadow banking, the legal and regulatory status of cryptocurrencies, the proper and improper use of financial data, the tremendous risk that cybersecurity poses to the system, the proper and ethical use of AI, the effective regulation of payment systems, he wrote. The CEO of one of the world's largest banks also said that, quote, regulators need to decide what they want included in the regulatory system and what they don't want included, stressing how complex regulation in the U.S. currently is. Dimon may have a point, especially when it comes to crypto. Different government agencies appear to have different agendas, with sometimes contradictory positions. And you know what? It's not their like legal authority to say jack shit about cryptocurrency. So the fact that they have any position at all should be something that Dickhead here deals with on his own. An example is the Securities and Exchange Commission, which claims authority over most Ethereum-based tokens previously sold in the U.S. to raise funds for new companies, but the Commodities Futures Trading Commission oversees all things Bitcoin related, like futures and options contracts. Then there's the IRS, FinCEN, and various other state and local regulatory agencies that have their own views on the matter. Though with more and more traditional financial investors showing interest in crypto, big banks are hoping for clear rules. Just yesterday, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon said that he expects the digital currency world will experience a, quote, big revolution in terms of regulation, and that current regulations prevent the bank from acting as a principal around crypto. Dude, you are so full of shit! Full of shit! Goldman Sachs owns Circle, which runs USDC. Give me a fucking break. These people have been involved since like 2015, 2016 in like payments processing. Circle was one of the... Fuck. They were at least part owners in Circle from the very beginning. And it's evolved into being a stablecoin issuer, and they're basically Goldman Sachs. So, I mean, it's like it pisses me off because these people are fully involved, and you know they act like there needs to be some law. There doesn't need to be any law. They already know how to treat this shit. They're already into it up to their ass. But they don't want you in it. And that's what all this, there needs to be regulation. Fuck you. I craft a new cryptocurrency tomorrow. There isn't any federal entity that's regulating it. It's not even on their radar. They don't even care about it. They don't even know about it. And that's the way I like it. These guys don't have any real position over Ethereum. Ethereum does as Ethereum does. And people do with Ethereum as they choose to do. Anyway, continuing on. The bank called the battle for, quote, digital supremacy between traditional banks and fintechs like the quote, real post-COVID-19 story in a research note for investors earlier this year. According to JP Morgan, banks need to buck up their ideas if they want to compete with the rapidly expanding fintech sector, or they will become a thing of the past. In his letter today, Demon added that, quote, level playing field regulation was needed in order for banks to fight this, quote, enormous competitive threat. You know what, dude? You cannot compete with the rest of the planet. There aren't enough of you to compete with us. Continuing on. And the threat he's talking about is real. Yes, the rest of the fucking world wants financial freedom and liberation from cuntbags like you. JP Morgan estimates that there are now 58 fintech companies with a market cap of over $1 billion, all competing for customers with quicker and more efficient services. And they're all going to go broke, by the way, including Jamie Dimon. Notoriously anti-crypto, Dimon once said that his own daughter was, quote, formerly smart after buying Bitcoin, and that its investors were stupid. But the billionaire banker's business is warming to the asset. Dude, they own a fucking stablecoin. Fucking... Hold on a moment. Let me do just a teeny tiny bit of due diligence here. JPM coin. Stable. It seems to me they're involved in like some consortium that's behind one of the other stable coins. I want to say it's GUSD, but that might just be Goldman Sachs because they're into that one too. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, here we go. JP Morgan's stable coin, JPM coin, is finally here. And this is on October 27th, 2020. So not all that long ago. And I'm just going to read this just to do it. And these fucking people... No. How do I get around and block? Fuck you. Nothing. Fuck. These fucking people. They use cookies, so they have to fucking mar your shit with it. Some of them are centralized. Oh, yes. It's fucking... Okay, here we go. JPM coin is live according to the report. The expansion, along with various other progress, turned JP Morgan to build a new trade to its digital currency ventures called Onyx. The system has more than 100 employees. Let's see here. Blockchain is profitable. It seems that after the recent PayPal adoption news of crypto, JP officials too believe that blockchain is really profitable. The bank has also recognized blockchain's value to study the current old system for processing, quote, hundreds of millions of checks. Blockchain and digitization can isolate the physical appearances of this exchange collectively. George Akopoulos further said that by adopting a version of the blockchain, with the members being the main distributors of checks and the main drivers of lockboxes, it's possible to preserve 75% of the total price for the business today and make checks ready in case of ticks as opposed to days. Okay. Or in the case of clicks, probably, as opposed to days. It also looks like JP Morgan has faith in blockchain for the consumption of new payment tracks for global central banks and their developing digital currencies. Aiming to China and Singapore, Georgakopoulos showed his interest that the possibility of CBDC approval is very high. This could be promising news for the stablecoins and the overall cryptocurrency market too. Just a few days ago, People's Bank of China cracked down on stablecoins. The PBOC has asked for public feedback to review the ongoing central banking law, which intends to authorize and legalize digital yuan, but ban the distribution of yuan-pegged digital tokens. The central bank issued this notice on Friday, 23rd October 2020. It's super easy. Oh, let's see. It's Ripple bullshit. Let's see. Yeah, so this is interesting. It appears as though China is cracking down on stablecoins. That's interesting. To me, that's probably targeting the activity that's going on in DeFi. However, the interesting thing about that is that most of the quote-unquote stablecoins that are circulating within quote-unquote DeFi are like synthetics. I mean, not to say that they aren't associated with some volume of USDT or USDC, but they're not the actual quote-unquote stablecoins themselves. I don't know, it's interesting. Anyway, so I think that in the long run, entities like JP Morgan are going to go broke. And I really think that this fudding by Jamie Dimon, as Mr. Max Kaiser calls him, I think, yeah, we finished that one. Okay. He's never liked Bitcoin, but I think that it's starting to become obvious to them that over the longer term, they're not going to be able to maintain their current association with things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. That whatever stablecoin projects that they have that link to these cryptocurrencies, blockchains, that whatever association they currently have, those involve transaction fees on those networks. And they're probably looking at them over the longer term, and they're like, dude, these are just going to continue to get more and more expensive. So we need to find a way to disassociate ourselves directly from their blockchain and be doing something else. The problem with that is that it's a very limited perspective of Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is state agnostic, regulation agnostic, it doesn't have a framework that it's contained within. Okay, it can adapt, it can change. And I believe that over the longer term, entities like JP Morgan, they'll be able to do all their wonderful securities and bullshit like that. They'll be able to do that all subjectively and still keep better records of it than they've ever been able to keep if all they are doing is simple transactions directly on Bitcoin's blockchain. But the thing that needs to happen in order to make that very, very cheap is to eliminate impediments like the block size limit. Because basically that's an artificial threshold that holds back the amount of transactive activity that can be happening on the network at any time. It is true that you can do parallel networks, and you can do side chains, and you can do payment channels and all that other business to try and offload it. But it's never going to be intrinsically as cheap as just doing a simple transaction, just in time alone. Because those payment channels, they're open for a significant period of time. And while the incentive hasn't really been there to attack them yet, to my knowledge, I think there's been a few attempts, but there hasn't, in my opinion, been as much effort dedicated to hacking them as, say, hacking exchanges, because there's a higher concentration of monetary value in the exchanges themselves. So successfully compromising them is inherently more rewarding than trying to compromise a simple payment channel. But what about when that payment channel has billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin tied up in it? Suddenly the incentive to crack that thing open and extract those Bitcoins is way higher. And just the issue of transaction fees alone is not going to be enough to impede it. Where you're trying to put people directly on via systems that are completely subjective, that you control all of, even that's not going to be enough. And DeFi has already shown us this. Whether or not that's some attempt to beta test this, people are really fucking smart when it comes to getting that nut. Okay? And I mean, we've read through a multitude of these reports of logic attacks happening where people are just abusing the conditions of the contract itself and interacting it with other contracts that have elements that allow them to circumvent the trust base of one contract by diverting it onto another. They just hook them up all. It's like a big mathematical equation, man. And you hit start on one end, and on the other end, you get the money out, and they're left with illiquid, going, "Oh my God, what the fuck do we need now?" And the longer that payment channel is open, the longer people have to dedicate to planning efforts of extracting that fucking Bitcoin out. Assuming, of course, it's actually even really there. But that's another argument for another time. Anyway, the fundamental part about it is that you cannot abuse it in this way. I mean, you can, but once you do, you will irrevocably cancel out the trust that it currently carries. And by the time you do that, if there are any competitors existing, if there's any potential for a competitor out there, they will eat your lunch. And it'll happen faster than it has this time. So rather than going through all of that, I don't know, I think when it comes down to it, I think it's all going to happen. that we're going to see some sort of state dominance or some sort of corporate dominance. The position will get abused. There won't be anybody to bail them out because it's all based on either Ethereum or Bitcoin. And because they're of limited issuance, the determining who provided the illiquid liquidity, the false positives for we have Bitcoin, but we don't really, it's somebody else's Bitcoin. All of those things will ultimately be resolved. At one point or another, the people that are carrying a Ponzi scheme or extending a false ledger, they're going to have to pay a fucking transaction fee to settle the transactions out. Say over time the volumes of Bitcoin that they do have, that over time they hit a amount, or they hit a valuation where in essence they've made good by settling out with what little volume they had. But in truth, they didn't, because they're not giving full value. And the point being that eventually the bill always becomes due, and with Bitcoin, it will become due solely in the fact that we are not going to switch it around and say, okay, the code says that there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin. We're going to have to modify it to where it says there's going to be 21 billion Bitcoin. Or we're going to have to add a few zeros so that we can break them down into smaller units, or whatever. the people that are going to be making those decisions are not going to be Jamie Dimon, are not going to be the board of directors for JP Morgan, are not going to be the governors of the central banks. They're going to be individuals like you and me who are marshaling hashing power on the network. And that's going to be true as long as we consider Bitcoin valuable. If that stops being true, Bitcoin will stop being valuable. Because the very trust mechanism, or the mechanism that we utilize to offset trust, to eliminate the need for trust, is people like you and me who are running hardware on that network and dedicating that hardware to preserving the accuracy of the record. The blockchain. And if that stops being there, we've reintroduced trust. And we've already seen where trust is going to be abused. For the longest time, paper currency itself was illegal. Why? Because you can't fake gold. You can fake IOUs for gold. You can make as many fucking IOUs for gold as you want. You can maintain as many ledgers for those IOUs as you possibly can generate. But at one point or another, people are going to want their fucking gold. And if you don't have the gold in the vault to cover for all the IOUs that you've got circulating, when they come in to cash those out, you're going to get fucked. And this factoid, this little characteristic, this trait, was ingrained into Bitcoin from the very beginning. It's not an accident that we use mining as a metaphor for the creation of new Bitcoin. And this reality is not going to go away. It doesn't matter how many layers of fucking synthetics and tokens. It doesn't matter. Eventually, the sums have to settle out. And when they do, they're going to incur transaction fees. And when they do, those transaction fees are going to go up because the demand for the block space is going to go up. And when that happens, the people that have lower balances than those transaction fees are going to get canceled out. Because the network is going to say, thank you for that big ass transaction fee for your transaction, but you don't have any more than that. And you can't cover the transaction and the transaction fee beyond this point, so you are fucked. We're going to cancel it out. You just got liquidated. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Again, this threat doesn't go away. And you can put as many layers between you and it as you want. But it doesn't go away. Ever. Let's go ahead and throw back down with some music. As far as where to go, though. You know what? I got this rockin' tune by Helmet going right now. And I think I'm just going to restart it and go with it. Helmet. Better. Here on Coin Metal. And that was Tool with Vicarious. And so, as far as what else we're going to get into here, I got this other thing. Big muckety muck. Talking a bunch of smack about crypto. Goldman Sachs CEO, big evolution is coming to Bitcoin regulation. And this is by Matthew DeSalvo. It is authored on April 6th, 2021. Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon has said that he thinks Bitcoin and digital currency world will soon experience, quote, a big evolution, particularly regarding regulations in the United States. The head of one of the world's biggest banks made the comments today during an interview with CNBC. He didn't reveal much about what Goldman Sachs was doing when it comes to Bitcoin, suggesting that the current regulatory landscape in the U.S. prevents the bank from doing so. Bullshit! But Solomon did make it clear that Goldman is keeping a close eye on crypto due to growing client demand. Quote, "We continue to think about the digital currency and the digitization of money in a very proactive way," he said, adding that, quote, "there are significant regulatory requirements concerning a move towards handling cryptocurrencies." Goldman Sachs plans to begin offering Bitcoin investment products to its wealth management clients, and it recently announced the reopening of its cryptocurrency trading desk. When asked if he would like to act as a principal with crypto services and whether lobbyists in DC are having any luck with getting, quote, "the rules changed that prevent Goldman from doing so," he said, quote, "I think that this is a space that is evolving. This is a space that we're trying to be responsive to our clients. I think there will be a big evolution in how this evolves in the coming years." He added that the bank was engaged with its clients and paying attention to regulations to see how to move forward. Regulations regarding Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies remain complicated as different government agencies pursue competing and sometimes contradictory positions. You notice that we're getting the similar message from the two big mucky mucks, right? So this is basically, we're getting fed somebody else's narrative concerning how this space is going to get treated. Well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter if you're the SEC. It doesn't matter if you're the head of fucking Goldman Sachs. It doesn't matter if you're Jamie Dimon. You cannot stop kids from getting involved in this shit. No more than you can stop them from file sharing. It's just as ubiquitous as that. We're talking about money being made as ubiquitous as BitTorrent. Not just the transmission of existing coins and the operation of existing coins, but also the creation of new coins and the distribution globally of those coins. Anyway, continuing. And here we go again. Listen very carefully. This is the same exact block of information that we got from JP Morgan. So, if you want to pretend that these people aren't acting in concert here, like trying to broadcast and project a specific mimetic, directing the narrative, so to speak. Continuing. The SEC, for example, regulates the trading of securities and claims authority over most Ethereum-based tokens that were sold in the U.S. as a way to raise funds for startups, i.e. ICOs. The CFTC oversees the market for Bitcoin derivatives, such as futures and options contracts, on exchanges like Bakkt and CME. And CME owns Bakkt, don't they? Or no, I'm sorry, that was ICE. Never mind. ICE, rather. Goldman Sachs will, in one way or another, expose its clients to Bitcoin. The firm last month filed an SEC application for a new investment product that tracks the ARK Innovation ETF, which is invested in the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. The bank is the latest institution to express an interest, even if still cautious, in digital assets. Major banks have differing opinions on decentralized cryptocurrencies and are careful on how to approach and invest in them. Yeah, so there you have it. I laugh because there really isn't anything different between you and any of these entities. Grayscale, SEC, all of the Goldman Sachs backed, they're all people. It's all people, right? Well, that being said, all of those people are potential investors in cryptocurrency, whether it be Bitcoin or another. And that's what makes this space so very, very different. And it's something that the likes of Goldman Sachs would like to change about it. They'd like to kick you the fuck out. They don't want you creating, synthetic derivatives on some DeFi exchange or some shit. They don't want that. They like the world where they get to tell everybody else what to do with their money because they create the money. They like that position. Well, that position is now not theirs exclusively anymore. It hasn't been since roughly 2008. There have been various attempts at what's going on in cryptocurrency right now. And when I say that, I mean the birth of Bitcoin and the proliferation of similar projects since. This is not an event or a movement that started yesterday. Or did it even start in 2009? It was earlier than that. I would say this probably goes back to somewhere in the 70s. Visa, they got picked up where, I think it's the Diners Club, although I think the Diners Club is still in existence, but that's where it really started back in 1955 or some shit like that. But anyway, there have been various attempts to do that, and the only ones that currently exist from that previous era, Visa's era, are like Visa, MasterCard, and a few others like Discover. But for the most part, the rest of them have rinsed out, or they just don't have as broad a utilization as they would have liked. And there's always been some sort of impediment, whether it be licensing and registration, information that you have to do in order to participate in these systems. And then, people look at the potential reward and they're saying, well, it's not really profitable for me to do DigiCash if I have to apply for licenses to be an MSB just to handle it. And that's what made Bitcoin so much better, was that I don't have to host your funds in order to allow you to do things with them. You can have the money. It's not something where, if I'm Goldman Sachs and you've got an account with me and you've got your money in your account with me, where say you have $20,000 and you want to make a withdrawal. There are rules and regulations in place that say that I, as Goldman Sachs, can tell you, no, you can't have all 20,000 of your dollars this month. We're contractually or some other way obligated to treat any transaction over $8,000 or per month, or a grand total of $8,000 per month. That there's other regulatory risks, and you would have to apply for a different type of account, and that would cost you more money, and so on and so forth. That they can put those barriers up. When you had the money yourself, digitally, it's no longer a matter of what they approve of. It's what you want to transact at that point in time. That's the only condition anymore. And so these people have been trying to get you to re-envision crypto where it still has a place for them to stand over you and point down and say, you will do this. When in fact, the very creation of Bitcoin, the very success of Bitcoin in its first year, was basically the planet saying, look, dude, you've had your run, but we're kind of done with you. We're kind of done with trusting you to issue the coin, to tend our currency, to custody our funds. We can't trust you to not loan those funds or use them as collateral against some scheme where you're funding ventures that we do not approve of and would not knowingly fund if we had a choice in the matter. And this is what makes Bitcoin so very, very different. You know, in a time when they were required to host more money, you were hit, the one that was hit up for the money, not them. You know, when some politician wanted something done, he would be coming to you for grants and saying, hey, look, you know, we really want to get this school built or so on and so forth. Can you help us out? You know, we'll write up a bond, you know, we'll sell the bonds and, you know, you'll get a profit off of such and such output. But the deal had to be made that way. It wasn't something where they went to the bank or some other organization that's handling finances on an investment level and say, hey, we could really use some assistance here, you know, with our oil exploration or our war profiteering. You mind hooking us up? That's profitable, you know. And so I really think that over the longer term, as we displace more and more monetary activity and monetary value, that you're going to continue to see more and more calls to try and rein you in. It'll be something like the TV is right now with Rona, where it's like every other mention on TV is something about coronavirus or vaccine or it's like, give me a fucking break, man. That is operant conditioning. The fact of the matter is the reason they need to mention it that many times on TV is because that's the only place they can make it real for you. When you walk out every day and you don't see people that are sweating from fevers and coughing on their fucking sleeve or something like that, it's really hard to reaffirm in your mind the impression that there is some killer fucking virus that you need to get vaccinated against right fucking now. And if you don't have those stimuli, if it's not a part of your corporeal reality when you go out every day, it needs to be somewhere in order for you to continue to obey and behave as though it exists at all. It's called operant conditioning. You know, it's how it works from changing a civilian into a soldier. Was the same principles. They're just being conveyed to you as though you're in boot camp and the MSM is the only stimuli that you have. It's the only thing reaffirming to you the status of existence of the rest of the world outside of the cubicle that you live within. Like I said, operant conditioning. And it's something of what we're seeing with articles like this one and the previous one, the one we read about JP Morgan, where they're talking about this in terms like it gives one the impression that either the authors of these articles were in the same meeting or Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan were in the same meeting, and so they're saying the same things. And it's basically that, you know, that all of these regulatory entities having cross interests and whatnot is preventing them from keeping you and I out of this. When in fact, in this space, money is more an expression of not just trust, but value. How much you value it. Not something that Goldman Sachs is dictating to you. Not something that JP Morgan is dictating to you. Not something that the Federal Reserve is dictating to you. Something that you decide for yourself. And that the price that exists right now, whatever manipulation it may be experiencing, is temporary. meaning that if there is any undue pressure, undue money being spent on one side to create a specific result, that eventually that source of money will run out, especially if it isn't maintaining enough feedback to the rest of the market to support it as reality. Anyway, so this next thing I got here is on Decrypt, and there was an allusion to something about this on Twitter, and I don't know if we tapped on it in an article yet, but we'll see if it comes up. Ripple wins ruling to expose SEC documents on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And this is by Jeff Benson. It was authored on April 6, 2021. Since December, Ripple Labs has been fighting a $1.3 billion case brought against it by U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, which accuses the digital payments company of offering an unregistered security in the form of its native XRP token. The company today won a discovery ruling that will require the SEC to hand over internal documents about Bitcoin and Ethereum. As a result, the general public may soon get a peek behind the curtain of the SEC, which has been historically tight-lipped about crypto's regulatory status. That's because they do not have any authority to regulate anything in crypto. Continuing on March 15th, Ripple Labs, along with its co-defendants, CEO Brad Garlinghouse and Executive Chairman Chris Larson, filed a motion to compel the SEC to produce documents regarding the SEC's communications about Bitcoin and Ethereum, or its internal communications about XRP. Quote, "For almost a decade, the SEC watched as XRP grew and developed, all the while issuing no formal guidance that its sales may be, quote, illegal." It wrote in the March 15th filing to U.S. District Court Judge Sarah Netburn. The SEC did, however, announce that sales of two similar digital assets, Bitcoin and Ether, were not securities offerings. And they weren't, and we'll go into that later. The SEC, through public comments from both former Chairman Jay Clayton and former Director of Enforcement William Hinman, has made it known that it doesn't consider Bitcoin and Ethereum, the two largest cryptocurrencies by market cap, to be securities. However, the Commission has not issued any formal guidance that explains in detail how it arrived at this conclusion. I can explain it. A security is a type of investment contract that implies the expectation of future profits. Ripple is likely looking for SEC mentions of XRP as a, quote, virtual currency, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which would bolster its case that it should be treated similarly. It might also get some insight into the agency's criteria for determining when digital assets are and aren't securities, which it could then presumably use to make a case that XRP meets those requirements. Quote, "I'm going to grant in large part the defendant's motion," Judge Netburn said. Netburn. Gosh, I wonder what he's supposed to do here. Said during the interview, as reported by Law 360, I wonder what she is supposed to be doing here, Ms. Netburn. She included documents such as meeting minutes and internal memos as part of the order, but not internal staff emails. The SEC argued against the discovery motion, claiming that the, quote, "the actions of the promoter are what need to be the focus here." XRP is up 22% in the last 24 hours, reaching $1.06, its highest price in over 3 years. Ripple was not immediately available for comment. So yeah, okay. Let me break it down for you. Ripple, in essence, it's already been created. Like they've already been quote unquote mined. And they were sold out into the market. And there isn't anything wrong with that. People willingly engaged in those transfers. They said, give me some XRP. This is the price that we're willing to acknowledge and utilize as our benchmark. If the market should change where we're having to pay more or we're paying less, so be it. And that was accepted among the participants that initially decided to invest in Ripple Labs. Or I'm sorry, XRP, because they weren't really investing in Ripple Labs. Now, the way that Ripple's connection to XRP is that they issued XRP. Right? They launched it. But XRPs are not a guarantee to any kind of monetary value in beyond themselves. Meaning that if there was an agreed upon exchange rate of say 5 cents and I gave Brad Garlinghouse $1, he gave me 20 XRP at that exchange rate. That was based on an agreement between Brad Garlinghouse and myself, and that's it. Now, I don't know that those XRP are going to retain that 5 cent valuation in the open market. That's why I only gave him $1 instead of more. Because I'm not sure. But I'm willing to take a bet. I'm willing to throw down $1 that the XRP that I give Ripple Labs, the XRP that I get from Ripple Labs in exchange for that $1 is going to appreciate as opposed to depreciate. And in this case, if I had made that bet back when Ripple Labs was worth only quote unquote $1, or not $1, 5 cents rather, I would have had 20 Ripple, and so I would have made 400% profit. Now, was I expecting that 400% profit when I initially bought those XRP? No. I was expecting that they would appreciate over US dollars, meaning at least retain their relative value, relative nominal value in the open market by investing that monetary value in Ripple in XRP. And that's about as simple as I can make it, So the whole idea that the SEC even has a case or even has any business dictating jack shit to Ripple Labs about XRP is complete bullshit on its face, in my opinion. But I'm not a lawyer, but I've never seen a law out there that allows the SEC to just run around like they've got a magic wand and say, this is a security, so it's a security, give us some fucking money. You're issuing unregistered securities, give us some money, or we're going to sue you. I don't know where that's legal, that they can just arbitrarily determine that something is a security. I believe that's a classification for the market itself to determine. And I think over the longer term, we're going to find out that that's exactly how it's going to work, whether or not we want to impose our little regulatory frameworks on whatever it may be. Continuing on. Let me see what else I got here. Here we go. And this to me is really interesting because we've seen attempts at this before. And invariably what happens is that the lobbying group or consortium or foundation or whoever it is, their internal politics cause them eventually to break up. But more importantly is they try to make promises. They try to say things like, we are willing to put down on paper that cryptocurrencies will abide by these rules. Now, they've never been able to do this even with Bitcoin. Fucking Ethereum, the developers can't get the goddamn miners to switch off their hardware and just let the POS network take over. So what makes anybody think that they're going to be able to draft up some sort of regulatory framework, and that this organization, whoever they may be, is going to speak for miners, exchange operators, node operators, payment channel operators, MSBs that are licensed, legacy, and they can't speak for these people. They cannot guarantee to anybody else, not to a government, not to a bank, not to anybody else, what the fuck you are going to do. They can say what options they will provide you with, but what you actually choose may be something that they themselves do not actually have any control over. You might choose to trust a new cryptocurrency that came out yesterday that they have absolutely zero knowledge of. And they will have nothing to say about what you're doing. It's gone. It's out of their fucking hands. What are they going to do? Hunt down everybody that's operating a node? Give me a fucking break. It's something that's possible. But is it really necessary? And more importantly, would it be beneficial? And I say no. We're in a time when sources of value and the creation thereof has never been easier, and is getting easier every other day. And we have these people that have enjoyed positions of power, and they've probably known the entire time that whatever position they had at that moment, it would be temporary. It would either get better or it would get worse, but it would not stay the same. There would always be competitors arising over the horizon, coming to eat their lunch. And that they would have to act proactively, and also, keeping on toes with what's going on right now, and trying to retain that level of dominance that they previously had. But the problem is that we've gone so far down that road that the regulatory structures that have developed in efforts to keep everybody else in line and under their thumb have erected to the extent that they are stifling innovation in pretty much every sector of the economy and, I would say, society in general. And the only places that are really expanding are places where they do not have the ability to impede in the progress. And it's one of the reasons why cryptocurrencies, despite every government say so, and every corporate say so, and desire, and lobbying effort, has remained free. Because no matter what anybody says about it, all that really matters is what people do. And if they're doing something and it costs them money, they're going to be paying attention to what they're doing. And if what they're doing is no longer supporting their interests, or that it never did in actual function, they will stop doing it. They'll start doing something else that is actually profitable to them. And that's the level of control that hasn't been enjoyed by the average person, specifically concerning currencies, in a really long time. I mean, it has always in like a little niche here and there, but I mean, there's always going to be dissidents. There are always going to be people that are willing to agree to transact solely with one another and not anybody else. Little contained economies. but they only ever benefit the people that are participating in them. And that's one of the things that makes Bitcoin different, is it scales. If anything, it scales that ability beyond just one or two little entities here and there, and hands it to everybody. In essence, kind of acting like the firearm did back in the 5th century or 6th century, when they finally figured out how to weaponize it properly. Anyway, got this thing here. It's on Cointelegraph.com, and this is by Sam Borgi. So yes, penis. It was authored April 6, 2021. Crypto lobby groups are gaining traction in Washington as the threat of regulatory bottleneck looms. Oh, and by the way, it only ever stops it on the surface. It doesn't ever stop it from happening entirely. Continuing, crypto-focused lobbying groups in Washington, D.C. are playing an increasingly vital role in reorienting policymakers away from the view that digital currencies are used primarily for illegal transactions. Now they are preparing for, potentially, their biggest battle yet. The Blockchain Association, an industry trade group representing crypto firms, has added 10 members to its brass since December 2020, bringing its total to 34. Kristen Smith, the group's executive director, told Bloomberg that the association's members are extremely concerned about federal regulators clamping down on the industry over misplaced fears. Quote, "We in the industry think it's hugely problematic," she said, adding that, quote, "it misses the entire point of this innovation." Smith was commenting on recent proposals by the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF, and the Treasury Department to increase surveillance of the cryptocurrency market over concerns about money laundering and other illicit activities. The proposals, which could be finalized later this year, would place more burdens on investors and blockchain networks. Coin Center, a leading DC-based advocacy group, is raising money in preparation for a lengthy legal battle or lawsuit over the proposed regulations. Jeremy Brito, the group's executive director, told Bloomberg, quote, "Our job is to say absolutely there is a real risk here and that we all need to work together, but don't throw away the baby with the bathwater." Grayscale, the world's largest digital asset manager, donated $2 million to Coin Center earlier this year. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey also contributed $1 million to the advocacy group. Despite concerns about sweeping government regulations, the threat of an outright ban on digital assets is long gone, according to billionaire investor Tyler Winklevoss in a recent What Bitcoin Did podcast episode with Peter McCormick. Winklevoss said, quote, "I think that the U.S. will never outlaw Bitcoin. There's too much precedent that's been set in the courts. The coin flip order, which was a CFTC trade enforcement action, which was upheld in the courts, considered Bitcoin a commodity like gold." Digital assets have re-entered public discourse over the past 6 months as Bitcoin charted new all-time highs and major institutions like Morgan Stanley and MassMutual got involved. On the corporate side, Tesla and MicroStrategy have added billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin to their balance sheets, moves that many believe will normalize digital asset exposure moving forward. JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, and BlackRock have all recognized Bitcoin's emergence as a new asset class and, in some cases, one that could challenge gold for store value supremacy. Cryptocurrencies have reached several major milestones this year. The collective market capitalization of all digital assets topped $1 trillion in January before doubling less than 3 months later. Yeah. And so there you have it. That's for right now, though. You know, people always talk about that kind of shit, you know, about how they want to pin this to Bitcoin or pin that on some other crypto project. They're real happy to do that while Bitcoin's going up. But Bitcoin also goes down. You know, the sun also does set. And it's like people have no memory for the last time where it went from $6,000 to $20,000 back to $3,000 in less than a few months. And I mean, so it's like, enjoy the peak while you're on it. Don't get me wrong. Enjoy it. You know, we're floating around $56,000 a coin right now. Hey man, that's cool. But all I can say is, unless you've already taken the profit, I wouldn't be counting on the idea that it's going to stay at that level for, you know, an extended period of time. I mean, it could go up. And there are people that are talking about it reaching, you know, $100,000, $200,000, $500,000. It could very well do that before it makes any serious correction. But I don't know. I don't know that I have that much faith in it. I think as it receives challenges, as it currently is, you know, from regulators and shit like that, that the increased public exposure will get more people into it. But whether or not those people stay around without, you know, deciding, hey, you know, I've made enough profit, I can go ahead and liquidate now. Again, not something that I can predict. I will say that we're supposedly on a significant bump in hash rate coming. That there are a number of back orders that are being filled, and that those newer miners coming online is going to disrupt the current existing miners in their position. And it's going to have all kinds of interesting effects. It'll certainly cause Bitcoin's price to go up to where, I don't really know how much that's going to be worth, but it's a temporary thing. It's just a stimulus that happens. And it will correct, just like any other stimulus. Anyway, let's go ahead and bring this episode to a close. Thank you very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Friday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. And as far as our last dance is concerned, I'm going to go ahead and throw down a little bit of Soundgarden here. Rusty Cage, Last Dance, here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and y'all have an excellent evening. Good night.